The deputy slammed his palm on the hood of the truck and told Marcus Hale to step back from the woman by the roadside. "You don't know who you're protecting," he said, while the rain ran down her coat and the paper in her hand shook like a leaf. But why would a quiet truck driver risk his license, his route, and the only promise he had left to keep for a stranger? Why did the woman whisper a name Marcus had not heard in 20 years? And why did the deputy turn pale when Marcus opened an old logbook from his cab? One stop along the road was about to expose a secret Millstone had buried for years. Rain struck the hood in hard silver lines, blurring the traffic past Marcus Hale's shoulder. He stood between his freight truck and the ditch, one hand on the open cab door, the other lowered where the woman could see it. "Ma'am, you hurt?" She shook her head too quickly. Her coat was soaked through, and a torn envelope sagged in her fist. Behind her, a blue sedan blinked weak hazard lights into the fog. "I just need my papers back," she said. Red and white lights washed over the road. A sheriff's cruiser stopped behind the sedan. Deputy Carl Whitaker stepped out, boots splashing through water. "Driver," Whitaker called, "back in your truck." Marcus did not move. "I stopped to check on her." "And now you checked." Whitaker's eyes cut to the woman. "Ruth, get away from him." The name made her flinch. In Marcus's cab, his old logbook lay open beneath a thin leak from the window seal. Rain had begun to bead on the pages. Ruth saw him notice it. "Please," she whispered. They took the other half. Whitaker came closer. "I said step back." Marcus closed the cab door. "Deputy, does she need an ambulance?" "No." "A tow?" "No." "Then why is she being ordered into your car?" Whitaker turned so slowing drivers could see his badge and Marcus's jacket together. "This is local business," he said. "You passing through makes you a witness at most, and a problem if you keep talking." Ruth tried to speak. Her lips formed one word. "Safe." Marcus heard it beneath the rain because once, years earlier, he had trained himself to hear that word in truck stops and county offices. "What did you say?" he asked. Whitaker snapped. "Don't coach her." She lifted the torn envelope. "Safe mile," she breathed. "My mother said if anything happened, find the route man." For half a second, the highway seemed to thin around Marcus. He looked to the ditch, the sedan's open trunk, the damp receipts pressed against the blacktop. Safe Mile had not been spoken to him by a stranger in almost 20 years. Whitaker stepped between them. "That's enough." "You know that name?" Ruth asked. Marcus reached for the cab handle. "Hands where I can see them." Marcus stopped. "My logbook is getting wet." "I don't care about your driver diary." "It has nothing to do with this." Ruth bent toward one receipt near the tire, but Whitaker caught the motion. "Leave it." Marcus saw the print before water blurred it. M-17 Storage, Millstone Outreach Annex. A minivan slowed. Someone raised a phone. Whitaker turned sharp. "Keep moving." Marcus took one step toward the receipt. Whitaker slapped a flat palm against the truck's hood. "You don't know who you're protecting." Marcus looked at Ruth's torn envelope, then through the passenger window at the logbook bleeding dark dots across an old page. "No," Marcus said quietly, "but I know who taught her that name." Whitaker leaned closer. "Get in the truck, Hale." Marcus had not given him his name. The highway noise pulled back until all he could hear was the tick of Ruth's hazard lights and the slow drip onto the logbook. "How do you know my name, Deputy?" Whitaker did not answer. His radio crackled. "Carl," a woman's polished voice said, "bring her in before the driver starts asking about the envelope." At 6:45 that morning, Marcus Hale parked under the broken canopy of Fletcher's Fuel with diesel ticking through the pump and cold air crawling up his sleeves. Louisville by noon, Nashville by dark, maybe dinner with Lena if she answered. He wiped the windshield with a paper towel that smelled of blue cleaner. Inside the cab, under the clear plastic visor, Lena's graduation photo had curled at one corner. The phone buzzed on the dash. Lena. Marcus let it go to voicemail. The pump clicked off. A trucker 2 lanes over laughed from his cab, and the sound made the quiet feel larger. Inside the diner, heat fogged the windows. Bacon grease and burnt coffee hung in the air. Marcus sat at the counter and turned his mug to the right. "Long haul?" the waitress asked. "Long enough." She was in her 30s, with tired eyes and a pencil behind one ear. Her name tag read Dana. "Most drivers don't come in this early unless something's wrong." "Most drivers talk more than they drive," Marcus said. That almost got a smile. At the next booth, an older man patted his pockets and stared at a bill. His wife whispered, "It's fine, Earl. Leave the coffee." Marcus folded a 20 under his saucer, then added another. Dana saw it. "That your table?" "No." "You always pay for strangers." "Only when they look like they've already asked twice." His phone buzzed again. This time, he opened the voicemail at the truck. "Dad," Lena's voice said, "I can meet at 7, but I can't do another drive-by apology. If you're coming, come all the way in. I need to know you can stay in a room when it gets hard." Marcus stopped with one boot on the metal step. The cab smelled of vinyl and damp canvas. Her message continued. "I found Mom's box. There are papers about Safe Mile. I don't know why you kept them from me." He pressed save. On the dash, his route sheet listed delivery windows. He wrote under Louisville, "Call Lena before 5. Tell the truth." The words looked small. By mid-morning, clouds lowered over the interstate. Marcus passed cut cornfields, a church sign missing 2 letters, and a rest area where a man shouted beside a dead soda machine. His eyes lifted to Lena's photo. "You'd like the way she argues now," he said to the empty seat. A memory answered, Caroline at a kitchen sink, saying, "Marcus, people don't need you to disappear every time you feel guilty." At 10:18, dispatch called. "Marcus, you still good for Louisville?" "I'm good." "You sound half asleep." "Just listening to weather." "Don't stop for every sad story out there. We got penalties on late freight." Marcus looked ahead. Copy. He almost said sad stories rarely stood in the road by choice, but let the line go dead. Near Millstone, rain thickened. Traffic slowed where hazard lights blinked through gray spray. Marcus moved right. Then he saw the woman by the blue sedan, coat plastered to her arms, gripping a torn envelope as if the paper were the last dry thing left in the county. Marcus passed her by 15 feet. The delivery clock glowed on the dash. Lena's voicemail sat saved beneath his thumb. Freight shifted behind him with a low, wooden thump. He braked. In the mirror, Ruth Calder turned toward the truck like she had heard hope make a sound. The bell over Millstone Diner's door rattled at 9:37. Dana Brooks looked up from the sugar jars and saw a woman step inside with rain on her lashes. She held a cream envelope against her ribs. "Restrooms for customers," Earl Voss called. Donna shot him a look. "Morning to you, too." "I can pay," the woman said, searching both pockets. "I had cash." Dana set a mug down. "Coffee first. Paying later is a system we invented here." The woman took the window booth and placed the envelope on a white napkin. Water bled from the paper, making a dark square. Donna leaned close. "You waiting on somebody?" "A ride to the outreach office. They were to meet me at the annex, but no one answers." "You got a name?" Ruth Calder. Earl lowered the paper. Two men stopped talking. Ruth slid her hand over the envelope. You hungry, Ruth? No, I need these stamped before noon. If they don't, I lose the room. Ruth opened the envelope to show a letter, a photo, and receipts. My mother kept these. She told me Millstone had a safe mile office once. A fork scraped a plate and stopped. The door opened again. Elaine Porter entered under a beige umbrella, navy coat neat, silver bridge pin bright. Ruth, Elaine said, you should have waited in the car. I called 3 times. We have procedures. You get confused when you rush. Ruth pulled the envelope closer. These are mine. Of course. Elaine sat without being invited. I'm here to help you keep them safe. Dana came over with coffee. Can I get you anything, Ms. Porter? Elaine glanced at Donna's name tag. Privacy. This is a diner, Dana said. Privacy costs extra. Elaine's tone thinned. Ruth is part of our care program. I'm not in your program yet, Ruth said, because you make it difficult. Elaine reached for the envelope. Let me hold the originals. Ruth's knuckles whitened. My mother said never hand over originals. Elaine looked at the envelope, not Ruth. Her eyes paused on a faded stamp. Safe me? Dana saw it. So did Earl. Elaine softened her voice. Your mother was scared. Scared people leave bad instructions. She left me your name, Ruth said. Elaine's umbrella dripped onto the tile. Then she trusted me. Ruth shook her head. No, she wrote, if Elaine comes first, run. No one moved. The grill hissed. A semi shook the window until Ruth's spoon trembled. Elaine rose. You misunderstood. Ruth gathered the envelope, but Elaine closed her hand over the receipts. Paper tore. Dana stepped forward. Hey. Elaine slipped the strip into her coat pocket. She's unwell. I saw you take that. You saw me prevent a scene. Elaine looked at Earl, then the counter, collecting their silence. Ruth stood too fast. Coffee spilled, turning the envelope's edge brown. I need the annex, she said. M-17. Is it far? Earl answered, barely above the grill. 6 miles west, behind the old grain road. Elaine turned on him. He lifted his paper, but it was upside down. Ruth backed toward the door. I'll walk. Donna reached for her keys. No, you won't. But Elaine had already taken out her phone. Carl, she said, watching Ruth through the rain-streaked glass. She's leaving with documents. Someone here is encouraging her. Rain turned the shoulder into a narrow river as Marcus stepped around the front of his truck. Ruth stood with Deputy Whitaker between her and the sedan. Her left hand hung near her coat pocket, clenched around something small. The hazard lights blinked red against her wet sleeve. Ma'am, Marcus said, stay away from traffic. Whitaker snapped. I told you to stay in your cab. You told me. A pickup slowed, then kept driving. Whitaker planted one boot near Ruth's shoe. Ruth, get in the cruiser. I called the outreach office, she said. Not you. They asked me to bring you in. Who asked? People trying to help. Marcus glanced at the sedan. The trunk sat open, wind worrying the corner of a folder inside. Is she free to refuse a ride? Whitaker laughed once. You always question officers? Only when the answer should be easy. Ruth's eyes flicked to Marcus. He has the receipt. I don't have anything of hers, Whitaker said too fast. Ruth, what receipt? Whitaker stepped in front of her. Do not talk to him. For a moment, there was only the click of hazard lights and the roar of a semi. Then Ruth bent and pressed a hand to her pocket. Marcus saw the folded scrap. Whitaker waved off a van. Keep moving. Marcus took one half step. Ruth's cold fingers brushed his palm. The paper stuck wet against his skin. Whitaker saw it late. What did she give you? Marcus opened his empty left hand. Nothing you asked for. Other hand. What is the legal reason? Rain bounced from Whitaker's hat onto Marcus's jacket. You think a freight license makes you a lawyer? No. Then stop acting like one, Ruth whispered. M-17, behind the annex. Whitaker caught her sleeve, enough to fold the fabric in his fist. Marcus looked at his hand. Let go of the sleeve. Whitaker's face changed. Not anger first. Calculation. You threatening me? I'm asking you not to pull her into a patrol car because she won't hand over paper. Another car slowed. A woman raised her phone. Whitaker loosened his grip. You don't know this county, he said. You don't know how many times we've cleaned up after people like her. Ruth's shoulders folded inward. Marcus pressed his thumb into the wet scrap. She has a name, he said. Whitaker smiled toward the car. And you have a delivery schedule, Mr. Hale. Marcus's eyes narrowed. I never told you my name. The radio on Whitaker's shoulder cracked. Carl, status. Handling driver interference. A woman's voice came through, smooth and careful. Make sure he does not leave with anything from the envelope. Marcus looked down. Black ink bled around one stamped line. M-17 storage. Millstone Outreach Annex. Beneath it, in blue pen, Calder box, hold original. Whitaker reached for it. Marcus folded the paper and slid it into his pocket. That's evidence, Whitaker said. Then you should have bagged it before it hit the road. Whitaker pointed toward the diner sign through rain. Both of you. Millstone Diner. Now. Ruth rides with me, Marcus said. She rides with me. Ruth lifted her chin. I'll walk inside where people can see. No one answered. Marcus gave Ruth the guardrail side while Whitaker followed, wiping rain from a badge that looked unsteady. The diner bell struck the glass before the door finished opening. Ruth came in first, dripping onto the black mat. Marcus followed with his cap in one hand. Whitaker entered last. Back booth, Whitaker said. Ruth held the counter edge. I want to sit here. You lost the right to make this difficult. Marcus set his cap down. Deputy. What? She asked for the counter. Dana slid a mug there. Counter's open. Earl sat beneath old county photographs, newspaper folded in his lap. Two drivers watched from the corner. The grill hissed behind Dana, filling the room with onion and coffee. Elaine Porter stood near the register. Ruth, she said, you frightened people? I frightened people by asking for my papers? You walked into traffic. I walked away from you. Whitaker pointed to the far booth. Sit down, Mr. Hale, away from her. Marcus obeyed, but looked at Ruth first. Her wet knuckles shone around the counter edge. Dana poured coffee by Ruth's elbow. Hands are cold. Ruth wrapped both palms around it. Thank you. Elaine's eyes moved to Marcus. This man inserted himself into a care matter. Marcus sat by the rain-streaked window. Above Earl hung a faded photograph. Yellow-vested volunteers beside a roadside van. The lower corner read, Safe Mile, Millstone Road, 2006. Marcus's spoon stopped inside his cup. You like old pictures? Elaine asked. I knew that van. Whitaker laughed. Of course you did. Donna turned, phone low against her apron. Elaine stepped closer. That program ended long ago. Mismanaged funds. Promises nobody could keep. Marcus kept his eyes on the photograph. Who told you that? Records. Records say many things after people are gone. Earl folded his newspaper again. Whitaker leaned over Marcus's table. Give me the paper she passed you, then leave town. Ruth whispered, No. Whitaker did not turn. Not your turn. Dana's phone tilted up. Marcus saw its screen in the sugar dispenser's reflection. You recording this, Dana? Whitaker asked. Her hand froze. Checking the time. The time is you staying out of county business. Marcus placed the receipt between salt and pepper. Then write down what it is. Elaine's calm thinned. That belongs to Ruth's file. Ruth pushed away from the counter. It belongs to my mother. The room held still. My mother's name was Lillian Calder, Ruth said. She said if Millstone ever took my papers, find the root man. Earl's cup rattled. Marcus looked at the photograph again. In the back row stood a younger version of himself with a clipboard. Donna saw it too. Whitaker snatched the receipt. Marcus did not stop him. You just made yourself responsible for it. Whitaker folded the wet scrap into his notebook. Elaine turned toward Ruth. Sign a release before you embarrass yourself further. Ruth's fingers trembled around the mug. Coffee rippled. Why does an outreach annex store original documents? Marcus asked. Elaine's eyes flashed. Because people lose things. Or because someone keeps them from leaving. Whitaker jabbed a finger at him. One more sentence, and you're coming with me. Thunder rolled over roof. Dana's phone lay face down beside the pie case, but its red recording dot still glowed. Marcus reached for the receipt, but Whitaker's notebook snapped shut. That paper stays with me, the deputy said. Dana set a plate down too hard. The fork jumped. Marcus looked from Ruth to the photograph on the wall. Then write her a property slip. Whitaker's mouth bent. You running my office now? No. Asking you to follow your own. Elaine gave a small laugh. Mr. Hale, your freight is colder by the minute. This is not your burden. The word settled over Ruth. She stared into her coffee as if the dark surface might let her vanish. Marcus pulled the old logbook from inside his jacket. The cover had swollen from rain. When he placed it on the table, it made a soft, heavy sound. Whitaker glanced at it. Your driver diary again? Marcus opened to a page marked with a fuel receipt. The paper smelled of diesel and old ink. Water blurred the year, but not the route names. Millstone, Marcus said. Route M17. Safe mile transfer point. People moved through the annex when shelters were full. Elaine's hand tightened around her folder. Earl leaned forward. That was real? Dana's phone stayed face down by the pie case. Whitaker scoffed. Anybody can write words in a book. Marcus turned another page. Not this signature. He pushed the book forward. Elaine looked despite herself. Her face lost color near the mouth. Ruth noticed first. You know it. Elaine closed her folder. Old paperwork has no bearing on current procedures. Then why did you take her receipts? I protected them. From who? Whitaker reached for the logbook. Marcus laid one palm over the page. Careful, Marcus said. You put your hand on evidence. You called it a diary. A driver in the corner muttered. He did. Ruth stood. My mother signed that program. Lillian Calder. If her name is there, I want to see it. Elaine moved between Ruth and the table. Your mother was not well. Ruth's voice thinned. Stop saying that like it erases her. Marcus turned pages. Names appeared in faded columns. Porter, Bell, Gaines, Calder. There, Marcus said. Whitaker stepped closer. Close the book. Elaine's voice sharpened. Now. Why? I'm showing her a name. Ruth reached past Elaine, but Elaine caught her wrist. Not hard. Just enough for everyone to see the claim. Dana lifted her phone. Let go. Elaine released Ruth. Whitaker pointed at Dana. "Turn that off." "It's off," Dana lied. Marcus looked down once more. Under Lillian Calder's name, blue pencil read, "Daughter transferred with sealed envelope. Hold originals until safe contact confirmed." Beside it was a signature, Elaine Porter. Marcus did not read it aloud. He closed the book and tucked it under his arm. Whitaker watched. "You're coming with us." "I can answer here." "No, you can answer where cameras don't encourage performances." Ruth gripped Marcus's table. "Don't leave me with them." The room shrank around that sentence. Coffee steamed. Nobody moved fast enough to change anything. Marcus stood, buttoned his jacket, and placed his cap beside Ruth's hand. "Keep that dry," he said. "If someone asks who stopped, you say my name." Then Whitaker took his arm and guided him toward the door while Elaine stared at the logbook beneath Marcus's jacket. The holding room smelled of wet wool, floor cleaner, and old coffee burned somewhere down the hall. Marcus sat with his hands open on his knees. Whitaker had taken his phone, wallet, and receipt before leading him through the side entrance. The metal chair had no cushion. Cold crept through his damp jeans. "Comfortable?" Whitaker asked. Marcus looked at the clock. 12:16 p.m. "My delivery window closes at 2. Should have thought before interfering." "You have a charge?" "We're deciding. That usually comes before the room." Whitaker smiled. "You talk like a man who wants more trouble." On the desk outside the glass, Marcus's phone lit once, then went dark. He could not see the name, only the bright rectangle reflected in the window. Sergeant Milo Gaines entered with a paper cup. He was 55, broad through the shoulders, gray hair cut tight, glasses on a black cord. "Carl," Gaines said, "step out." "He's mine." "He's in my building." Rain tapped the high window. Whitaker left, touching Marcus's phone as if reminding him who had it. Gaines set the cup near the slot. "Coffee's bad." "I've had worse." "I bet." Gaines slid a form onto the desk. "Name." "You have it." "Say it." "Marcus Hale." The sergeant's pen stopped. His eyes moved to the wet logbook sealed in a plastic sleeve beside the phone. "You ever drive for a state program?" Marcus kept his voice even. "I drove a lot of things." "That's not what I asked." The phone lit again. This time, the screen stayed alive long enough for Marcus to read. Lena. His fingers curled once against his knee. Whitaker returned with a plastic bag. "Porter says the woman signed intake. We can cut him loose after he gives a statement." Marcus looked up. "Ruth signed. She's being cared for." "What did she sign?" "A release. Adults do that. Adults also sign things when they're cornered." Whitaker leaned close to the glass. "You want to keep making accusations from a chair?" Marcus looked at his phone. It rang silently, vibrating across the desk. Gaines reached toward it, but Whitaker pressed it flat until the call died. "My daughter is waiting for me," Marcus said. "Then she'll learn patience." The voicemail icon appeared. Gaines removed his glasses. "Carl." "What?" "Don't touch the man's phone again unless it's logged." Whitaker stared. "You taking his side?" "I'm taking paperwork's side." Marcus heard Lena's saved message. "If you're coming, come all the way in." He imagined her by a restaurant door at 7, deciding the empty chair told the truth. The chair beneath him seemed colder. "Can I listen to that message?" Marcus asked. "No," Whitaker said. Gaines hesitated. Marcus leaned back. "Then write down the time she called." "For what?" "For the record of things you kept me from answering." The hallway went quiet enough that the fluorescent light hummed. Gaines picked up the phone and set it beyond Whitaker's reach. "I'll log it." Whitaker's radio cracked. Elaine's voice came through low but clear. "Carl, the Calder woman is becoming difficult. We need the driver's book before anyone else sees it." Marcus turned toward the sleeve. One drop slid inside, over the old cover, and stopped at the corner like it was waiting to fall. The outreach office sat behind a closed thrift store and a row of bare sycamores, its windows covered with beige blinds. Ruth heard the lock turn after Elaine brought her inside. "I thought this was a shelter intake," Ruth said. "It is," Elaine answered, hanging her damp coat with careful fingers. "Paperwork comes first." The room smelled of copier toner, lemon polish, and rain trapped in carpet. A space heater clicked under the desk. On the wall hung a framed certificate with Elaine's name in gold letters, and beneath it a donation photo where everyone smiled too brightly. Ruth stood near the door. "Where is my envelope?" Elaine opened a drawer. "Safe. That word keeps changing depending on who says it." Elaine's smile did not reach her eyes. "Sit down." Ruth sat because her knees had begun to shake. The chair was vinyl, split at one seam. Elaine placed a form in front of her and uncapped a pen. "This states that you voluntarily entered care, released disputed documents to Millstone Outreach, and declined outside assistance from the driver." "I didn't decline him." "You will." Ruth looked at the signature line. Her mother's voice rose in memory, small and hoarse. "If they rush you, Ruthie, don't sign." "I want to call someone." "You already caused a public disturbance." "I was asking for help." Elaine leaned closer. "And help is exactly what this county has given you, even when you made it hard." Behind the office, something thudded. Ruth turned. "Storage settling," Elaine said too quickly. At Millstone Diner, Donna wiped the same clean counter for the third time. Earl sat in the back booth, twisting his cap. "You got the whole thing?" he asked. "Most of it." Donna checked her phone. The video showed Whitaker's hand closing around Marcus's arm, Elaine watching the logbook, Ruth's face when Marcus left his cap beside her. Earl swallowed. "Delete my voice." Dana stared at him. "You worried about your voice?" "I got a daughter works nights at the annex. I know what Carl does to people who embarrass him." Dana lowered the phone. Outside, Marcus's truck still sat across the road, rain running down its silver grill. His cap was on the counter where Ruth had left it before Elaine took her. Dana picked it up. The brim was damp and warm from the diner heat. "There was a receipt," she said. M-17. Earl's paper shook. "Old Grain Road, building behind Porter's Annex." "You knew that earlier." "I knew the road. Didn't know boxes had names on them." Dana froze. "What boxes?" Earl rubbed both hands over his face. "Years ago I delivered shelving. Gray boxes. Tags. People's names. They told me it was temporary storage." Dana grabbed her jacket. "No," Earl said. "Dana, you can come or sit here and become furniture." At the outreach office, Elaine pushed the pen closer. "Sign, Ruth." Ruth folded her hands under the table to hide their shaking. "What happens if I don't?" "Your motel room is unpaid. Your ID is incomplete. Your car will be towed. Without cooperation, I cannot promise where you sleep tonight." The space heater clicked off. The room seemed to lose 10 degrees. Ruth looked toward the back hall. "My mother had a box, didn't she?" Elaine's face stilled. "She kept saying Millstone owed her a room and a name. I thought it was grief talking." Ruth stood. "I want to see the storage." Elaine reached for the phone. "Sit down." The back door rattled. Both women turned. From outside came Dana's voice, sharp through the rain. "Miss Porter, your front door was locked." Elaine shoved the form into a folder and walked fast into the hall. Ruth moved the other way. The storage room door was not fully closed. She slipped inside and stopped. Rows of gray boxes filled metal shelves from floor to ceiling. Each had a paper tag tied with string. Calder, Wynn, Brooks, Alvarez, names, dates, motel numbers, case notes. The air smelled of cardboard and dust, dry as a throat that had stopped asking. Ruth touched one tag. Calder, Lillian. Originals held. Her fingers could not untie the string. In the office, Elaine's voice sharpened. "You have no appointment." Dana answered. Neither did the deputy when he took Marcus. Earl's lower voice followed. "Elaine, open the storage." Ruth pulled at the knot until the paper tag tore down the middle. Inside the box lay a faded photograph, a sealed envelope, and a blue folder stamped Safe Mile. Under the folder sat copies of her birth certificate and her mother's handwritten note. If Elaine comes first, run. Ruth pressed the note to her chest. Then Whitaker's cruiser lights swept across the blinds outside. The fluorescent light over the desk clicked twice before Sergeant Gaines spoke again. "Safe Mile," he said, as if testing whether the words still belonged in the building. Marcus kept his hands folded on the metal table. "You know it." "I knew a version of it." Gaines looked through the glass at Whitaker pacing. Vans, motel vouchers, night calls. People said the program made trouble disappear. Marcus watched rain snake down the high window. People disappeared after it ended. From the hallway, Whitaker's voice cut in. "No, Elaine, I can't walk his book out without a log. Milo's standing on procedure like it's scripture." The name Elaine slipped under the door. Gaines removed his glasses. "Marcus Hale. I saw that name once on a transfer sheet. Thought it was a driver." "I was." "Only a driver?" "That was the part people trusted." "Ruth Calder," Gaines said quietly. "Is she in danger?" "She's being pressured to sign away proof. If Porter gets originals, Ruth becomes a story they can edit." Whitaker opened the door. "We're done. He gives a statement, then he leaves county." "Sit down, Carl." "I don't report to him." "You report in my station. Stop discussing evidence with Elaine Porter on radio." Gaines unlocked the drawer and took out Marcus's phone. "One call." Whitaker snapped. "Absolutely not." "One call," Gaines repeated. "Logged at 12:31 p.m. Marcus accepted the phone. Lena's missed call glowed at the top. Beneath it, her voicemail waited. He almost pressed her name. Instead, he opened contacts, scrolled past dispatch, past Lena, and stopped at Grace Bell. The line rang 5 times. A woman answered with wind behind her voice. "This better not be a warranty call." "Grace." Silence. Then softer. "Marcus?" "Millstone," Marcus said. "Safe Mile. Lillian Calder's daughter is here." "Ruth Calder. Porter has her documents. Whitaker moves between the road, diner, and annex." "Do you have proof?" "My logbook. A torn receipt. Witness video, maybe. Storage M-17. Do not let that book leave your hand." Whitaker stepped forward. Gaines blocked him. Marcus lowered his voice. "Grace, I missed this once." "No," she said, sharp enough that even Whitaker heard the edge. "You were cut out. There is a difference." The words landed harder than accusation. Marcus saw Caroline at the kitchen sink, Lena asleep beside packed boxes, the last Safe Mile van under yellow light. Grace continued. "Ask for the 2006 contract appendix. Ask for the Calder hold order. If Porter kept originals after closure, she has been sitting on federal transfer property for 19 years. Gaines pulled a notepad closer. "Who is this?" Marcus handed him the phone. "Retired Inspector Grace Bell." Gaines took it carefully. "Ma'am, Sergeant Milo Gaines." Grace's voice came through tinny but firm. "Sergeant, secure the driver, secure the book, and send someone honest to the annex before Porter empties a shelf." Whitaker laughed, but it came out dry. "You can't order us from a phone." "No," Grace said, "but the state auditor can ask why your radio placed you inside an active document dispute." Gaines turned toward Whitaker. On the desk, Marcus's phone buzzed with a new message from Donna. "We found the boxes. Cruiser outside." Dana stood in the diner kitchen with the lights off, one shoulder pressed to the walk-in cooler. The phone in her hand lit her face blue-white. On the screen, Whitaker's voice played under the clatter of plates. "Turn that off." "It's off," Dana had lied. Earl hovered by the back door, rainwater darkening his coat. "You sent it." "To Grace Bell." Dana watched the progress circle freeze at 92%. "Signal's garbage." Outside, cruiser lights swept over Marcus's truck, red bending across wet chrome. Earl rubbed his cap. "I should have said something years ago." "About the boxes?" "About people. They came in here with folders, waited for Porter, left without bags. I told myself they got placed somewhere." The phone chimed. Sent. Dana exhaled. "Now you can stop telling yourself." The back door opened, and Lena Hale stepped in from the rain with her hood half off and her jaw set hard. She was 26, neat in a dark work coat, with Marcus's steady eyes and none of his habit of hiding them. "I'm looking for my father," she said. "Marcus Hale." Dana lowered the phone. "You're Lena." "How do you know that?" His phone kept lighting up when they took him. Lena saw the damp cap on the counter. "He was here?" "He left that for Ruth." "Who's Ruth?" "The woman your father stopped for," Earl said. Lena touched the brim. Grease, rain, and old canvas clung to it. "He was supposed to meet me tonight." Dana waited. "He always has a reason," Lena said. "A route, a breakdown, a call from somebody worse off." Dana's screen buzzed. A reply from Grace Bell appeared. "Send names, times, receipts, camera angles, no opinions." Dana turned the phone. Lena's expression shifted by 1 careful inch. "Grace Bell? You know her?" "I found letters from her in my mother's box, Safe Mile. My dad never explained." Earl moved to the office and pointed at an old monitor. "Kitchen camera catches the counter. Front camera catches the booth. Parking lot catches the cruiser if the rain didn't kill it." Dana slid into the chair. She scrubbed backward through gray video until Marcus appeared, wet jacket shining under diner lights. Ruth stood beside him like she expected the floor to give way. "There," Lena said. "Pause." On the screen, Elaine's hand dipped toward her coat pocket. The torn strip from Ruth's envelope showed for 1 second before disappearing. "Timestamp?" Dana asked. 11:42 a.m. Earl wrote it on a napkin. Lena leaned closer. "Play the audio." The tiny speaker hissed. Elaine's voice came through. "That belongs to Ruth's file." Then Ruth. "It belongs to my mother." Lena sat down slowly. "My father didn't run from dinner. He walked into this." Dana did not soften it. "He got taken for asking why a woman's documents were being handled like property." A knock hit the back door. All three froze. "Dana!" a man called. "County office. Open up." Earl mouthed no. Dana killed the monitor. Lena grabbed the napkin and folded it into Marcus's cap. The knock came again, harder. Dana lifted her phone, started a new recording, and held it low beside her leg. "Name?" she called. No answer. In the silence, Grace's message lit the screen. "If someone comes before I arrive, do not hand over the original video." The county hearing room smelled of damp coats and old varnish. At 3:08 p.m., Marcus sat at the front table with his logbook under both hands. The sleeve crackled when his thumb moved. Across the aisle, Elaine Porter arranged tabs. Whitaker stood behind her chair, jaw tight. Judge Avery Collins entered, silver hair combed flat, glasses low on his nose. He looked first at Ruth. "Ms. Calder," he said, "you are not required to sign anything here." Ruth nodded. The blue folder from the storage box rested against her chest. Elaine rose. "Your Honor, Ms. Calder has been under our care, and Mr. Hale's interference escalated a fragile matter." Grace Bell sat beside Marcus, raincoat still wet. "Then clarify why a private office held original identity documents from a closed federal route program." Elaine smiled carefully. "Retired Inspector Bell is relying on incomplete history." Grace opened a flat archive box. History is rarely incomplete by accident. Lena sat behind Marcus, one hand on his chair. Judge Collins turned to him. "Mr. Hale, briefly." The microphone clicked on. It caught his breath before his words. "I stopped because a woman was on the shoulder in rain," Marcus said. "Whitaker ordered me away. Ms. Calder gave me a receipt marked M-17 storage. Later, that receipt was taken without a property slip." Whitaker leaned forward. "That is not accurate." Naomi Fields looked over her laptop. "Deputy, you will have your turn." Dana raised her phone. "I have video." Elaine turned. "Taken without consent?" Dana's voice shook, but the phone did not. "It was my counter, and you were loud." The side screen flickered. Grainy footage showed Elaine's hand moving to her coat pocket. "That belongs to Ruth's file." Ruth's recorded answer followed. "It belongs to my mother." No one spoke. Rain tapped the high windows. Elaine closed her folder. "A distressed woman's statement does not establish ownership." Grace slid a paper forward. "But this does." Naomi read the header aloud. "Safe Mile Route Transfer Appendix, 2006. Grace said, "It lists Lillian Calder and dependent Ruth Calder. Originals were to be transferred to state custody within 30 days. "Dependent?" Ruth whispered. Elaine said, "Those records were transitional." "For 19 years?" Grace asked. Whitaker muttered, "This is a paperwork error." Marcus finally looked at him. "Then why did you know my name on the road?" Elaine answered for him. "Everyone knows the carriers who pass through." "No," Lena said behind Marcus. "You knew exactly who he was afraid to be." Marcus turned slightly. "I thought he missed rooms because he didn't care enough to enter them," Lena said. "Today, I watched strangers explain the room he never left." Judge Collins removed his glasses. "Ms. Porter, Millstone outreach records are frozen. Deputy Whitaker, you are relieved from handling this matter." Whitaker straightened. "By whose authority?" "Mine, until the sheriff arrives." Ruth opened the blue folder. Inside was her mother's photograph. On the back, in faded ink, someone had written, "If the route man stops, tell him I remembered." Marcus read it once. Then he closed his eyes, and the hearing room waited for the truth he had avoided for 20 years. The photograph slipped from Ruth's folder and landed face down near Marcus's shoe. No one reached for it. The wall clock sounded loud. Ruth bent, but her fingers stopped above the picture. "May I?" Marcus asked. She nodded. He lifted it by one corner. On the front stood a younger Lillian Calder outside a motel room, one hand on a little girl's shoulder, the other holding a sealed envelope. Ruth stared. "That's me." Grace leaned closer. "Fairhaven Motor Lodge. Safe Mile used it when shelters were full." Elaine's chair creaked. Many families passed through Fairhaven. Marcus turned the photo over. If the route man stops, tell him I remembered. His voice came out low. I was supposed to make that transfer. Lena's hand tightened on the back of his chair. Judge Collins said, "Only what is relevant." Marcus placed the photograph beside the microphone. February 2006. Snow closed the east route. Lillian Calder and her daughter were logged for a night transfer. I recorded the motel, the envelope, and contact name. Naomi stopped typing. Contact name? Marcus looked at Elaine. Elaine Porter. Elaine lifted her chin. I was an intake coordinator. Grace opened a folder. Then this should look familiar. Naomi read under the lamp. Calder, Lillian. Daughter present. Sealed originals held pending safe contact. Signature. E. Porter. Ruth sat down as if her legs had ended. Whitaker stepped forward. A 19-year-old note proves nothing. Dana, near the back, said, The box is due. Judge Collins turned. Ms. Brooks? Dana raised her phone. Shelves behind the annex. Boxes with names. Ruth's mother's box had current copies and old originals. Earl stood halfway, cap crushed in both hands. I delivered shelving. I didn't ask enough. Elaine turned on him. You saw storage. I saw tags with people's names, and I walked out because you signed the delivery ticket. Ruth opened the folder. A birth certificate copy. A motel voucher. 3 letters never mailed. My mother didn't abandon me, she said. Marcus looked down. No. Ruth's eyes lifted. You knew her. I met her once. She gave me coffee in a paper cup and told me you hated orange medicine. Ruth pressed the heel of her hand to her mouth. Elaine spoke sharply. Sentiment is not evidence. Grace did not raise her voice. Evidence is the warehouse list, the receipt Whitaker took, the video of you claiming Ruth's file, and a signed hold order that was never lawfully closed. Naomi looked at Whitaker. Where is the receipt? Whitaker touched his notebook. Misplaced during intake. Marcus raised his eyes. Back cover. The deputy froze. Sergeant Gaines stepped from the door. Hand it here, Carl, Judge Collins said. Now. The notebook opened with a reluctant snap. The torn receipt emerged, wrinkled and damp, but the ink remained. Calder box, hold original. Ruth reached for it, then stopped. Copy it first. Judge Collins ordered the annex sealed, the boxes inventoried, and Ruth's documents returned under county supervision. As Naomi stamped the emergency order, the sound landed like a gavel before the gavel itself. Then the clerk lifted one more page from the archive folder. Your Honor, she said, there is a second Calder entry. The second Calder entry lay beneath a brittle fax cover, the ink almost gray. Naomi Fields turned it toward the judge. Alternate contact for Lillian Calder and dependent. Safe Mile Route Coordinator, Marcus Hale. Lena's hand slipped from Marcus's chair. Elaine stood. Then Mr. Hale had responsibility. If there was a failure, it began with him. Ruth faced Marcus. You knew my file existed? Yes. And you never came back? Rainwater dripped from an umbrella near the door. Once. Twice. Marcus opened the logbook. I came back 3 weeks later. The annex was closed. I was told Lillian transferred voluntarily, and no child remained. That is convenient, Elaine said. Grace removed a sealed packet. It is documented. Naomi cut the tape. Inside lay a state memo and a suspension notice. Grace said, Marcus filed an irregularity report on March 3, 2006. He named Porter, the annex, and missing originals. 2 days later, access was revoked. Lena whispered, You never told Mom. She was packing, Marcus said. She thought you quit. I let her. Ruth pressed her thumb into her folder. Why? Because the people still on my list were safer if nobody knew who reported Millstone. He looked at Lillian's photo. It wasn't enough. The microphone caught the break in his breath. Judge Collins turned to Gaines. Sergeant? Gaines stepped forward. Deputy Whitaker failed to log property taken from Ms. Calder and Mr. Hale. He kept radio contact with Ms. Porter while handling the matter. Pending sheriff review, I am placing him on leave. Whitaker's face tightened. Milo, don't do this for a trucker. Gaines looked at him. I'm doing it because you made the badge smaller. Whitaker removed his radio. The plastic click sounded louder than the rain. Elaine gathered her folders. Freezing our records will punish people who need us. Ruth stood, her restored identification against her chest. You don't get to call us needy after using it like a lock. Judge Collins raised one hand. Ms. Porter, your access to outreach records is suspended. Surrender annex keys before leaving. For the first time, Elaine looked toward the door. Naomi stamped the order. Lena came around Marcus's chair. Dad, were you ever just a driver? Marcus closed the logbook. That was the only part I still knew how to be. Grace said, Marcus Hale helped design safe mile routes across 4 states. Calling him a driver who cared too much made him easy to dismiss. Lena's eyes stayed on him. And you believed them? Marcus looked at the damp brim of his cap in her hands. Some days it was easier. Deputies sealed Elaine's keys in an evidence envelope. Whitaker passed without looking at Marcus. Elaine followed with her silver bridge pin turned sideways. Ruth slipped her papers into Grace's folder. Please, she said, not with them. At the doorway, Lena held out his cap. You left this with Ruth. I wanted someone to know I meant to come back. She placed it in his hands. Down the hall, Naomi called, Mr. Hale, Miss Calder, the county needs statements before inventory begins. Marcus looked at Ruth. She did not wait for anyone to speak for her. I'll start, she said, walking toward the room where every box would finally be opened. By 5:40 p.m., the county office had stopped pretending it was a normal Thursday. Boxes from the annex lined the hallway. Naomi Fields had tape on her sleeve and ink on her thumb. Ruth sat by the window with a blanket over her shoulders, reading tags while Grace checked them against the safe mile list. Marcus stood apart, cap in both hands. Judge Collins looked over an order. Mr. Hale, the county can freeze records. It cannot rebuild a roadside system by dinner. No, Marcus said, but it can stop doing the same thing tomorrow. Lena lifted her pen over a blank sheet titled Roadside Protection Proposal. Marcus moved beside her. Every traveler stopped by law enforcement gets a documented reason, camera footage saved, and a hotline number before any agency takes custody of papers. Naomi typed. Original documents require a court receipt. Grace added, no contractor stores them off-site without state registration. Earl stood by the door. Drivers need to know who to call. Half the time we see wrong and keep rolling. Donna folded her arms. Put the hotline on fuel pumps, mirrors, menus. Ruth's voice came from the window. And people get to refuse help without being punished. The room slowed. She did not look up from the tag. If help comes with a threat, it isn't help. Lena wrote that down. Marcus watched the pen move. The scratch chair, the warm printer smell, rain tapping the blinds. For years he had carried rules like cargo nobody wanted. Judge Collins read the page. This will make enemies. Grace shut a folder. Good policies usually do. Gaines entered without his hat. Sheriffs briefed. Whitaker is off calls. Porter's board chair resigned. Dana covered her mouth. Marcus did not smile. What about tomorrow morning? Gaines looked at the boxes. Until procedures are signed, any transfer involving outreach comes through me. No, Marcus said. The sergeant's shoulders tightened. Marcus set his cap on the table. Not one person, a process. You can be fair and still get replaced. The rule has to survive the decent people. Gaines nodded. Write it. Lena paused. What do you want it called? Marcus looked through the blinds. His truck sat under a street lamp, rain shining along the hood. Safe mile was taken, he said. Don't use it unless Ruth agrees. Ruth closed Lillian Calder's box. Use it, but not as a memory. She touched the paper with 2 fingers. As a warning. Lena wrote, No one gets left on the shoulder. The pen stopped above the last word. Her hand trembled once. Marcus placed his palm flat on the table, near enough. I was left in rooms too, Lena said quietly. I know. You don't get to fix highways and skip kitchens. The printer hummed before he could answer. Naomi pulled the first copy from the tray and placed it in front of Ruth, Dana, Earl, Gaines, and Marcus. Judge Collins capped his pen. Temporary order tonight, public session Monday. Grace slid Marcus his logbook. You finally delivered something on time. He touched the swollen cover. Not everything. Lena folded her draft and tucked it into the logbook beside the old route pages. When Marcus opened it, the new white sheet lay against the faded names, bright as a road sign caught in headlights. 3 months later, the new safe milepost stood at mile marker 118, bolted into frozen ground beside the same stretch of I-64 where Ruth had once stood in rain. The sign was plain, a reflective blue strip, a hotline number, and the words, No one gets left on the shoulder. Wind pushed at it until the metal trembled. Marcus parked his truck on the gravel turnout. He and Lena listened to the cooling tick beneath the hood. You always get quiet before exits, Lena said. Marcus looked at the sign. Used to mean I was deciding whether to stop. And now? Now I'm learning not to decide alone. The public report came out in January. Millstone Outreach lost its state contract. Elaine Porter resigned, then accepted an order barring her from client records. Whitaker left the sheriff's office after the review found misuse of authority and mishandled evidence. Sergeant Gaines kept his badge, but every deputy under him now attended roadside training with audits attached. Ruth sat through the report with both hands folded over her restored ID. 2 weeks later, she began work near Naomi Fields, helping people replace documents without surrendering originals. Her desk held Lillian Calder's picture and a glass jar labeled Copies Only. Dana's diner changed too. Beside the pie case, a laminated card listed the hotline. Drivers photographed it over coffee. Earl pinned up thank you notes from carriers, motel clerks, and people who signed only first names. On Marcus's passenger seat, the old logbook lay beside Lena's overnight bag. Inside it, Lena had tucked a new photograph. Marcus, Lena, Ruth, Dana, Earl, Grace, Naomi, and Gaines in front of the county building. Lena picked it up. Mom would have hated that nobody smiled. She would have made us take another, then kept the bad one. Marcus nodded. That sounds right. They crossed to the sign. The winter air smelled of diesel, wet leaves, and cold metal. Lena pulled her coat tighter. Tell me about her, not the box version. Marcus kept his eyes on the road. Your mother sang when bills were late. Badly. Loud enough to make the worry leave the kitchen first. Lena laughed once, then covered her mouth. She wanted me to come home carrying fewer ghosts, he said. I didn't know how. You can start with fewer secrets. I can do that, A sedan slowed near the turnout. The driver rolled down a window and pointed at the sign. "This the new helpline?" Marcus stepped forward, but Ruth's voice came from behind him. "It is." She had arrived in Naomi's county sedan, scarf tucked under her chin, Lillian's old envelope held in a plastic sleeve. She handed the driver a card and explained the number without rushing. Lena watched Ruth speak. "She sounds like she owns her name now," Marcus said. "She always did. People kept taking the paper for it." Ruth returned and offered him the sleeve. Inside was the torn note. "If Elaine comes first, run." Beneath it, Ruth had added one line in fresh ink. "If someone stops, ask their name." Marcus did not take it. "You keep that." "I made a copy," Ruth said. He looked at his daughter. "Of course you did." They stood by the sign until the sun dropped behind the trees. Marcus opened the truck door for Lena, then paused at the hood where Whitaker's palm had struck it months before. He set his hand there gently. This time, nobody told him to move. If this story made you think of a moment when someone was ignored, judged, or left to face a system alone, share it in the comments. Sometimes one remembered detail, one witness, or one person willing to stop can change what happens next. Share this story with someone who believes dignity matters even when no one is watching, and justice should reach the quiet places too. Subscribe for more stories about ordinary people, silent strength, and the kind of changes that last beyond one emotional day. Your voice may remind someone that stopping for the right reason still matters.